tonight's edition of Wining and Dining à la France. I'm Juliette Menard.
And I'm Jean-Luc Pierre. Tonight, we will be focusing on one of our country's most famous and most lucrative industries, wine. Recently, the wine industry has been shaken by a report of hard times for the economic outlook of this historic product.
That's right, Jean-Luc. Some major European reforms have recently influenced the French wine industry, according to the third quarter 2008 France Food and Drug Report. These reforms will help to balance the wine market, phase out useless and expensive market interventions, and allow the budget to positively influence the competitiveness for European wines.
Prior to the reforms, the French wine industry was having much success with expensive wines such as Burgundy and Champagne, with increased demand from the UK and Japan, as well as the usual high demand from the US and Russia. However, there's been a recent slump in the exports, and low-quality French table wines are faring very poorly.
Now that the reform is in place by the Council of the European Union, emphasis is being given not only to expensive wines, but to the entire market. Vineyard restructuring and conversion involving the clearing out of non-competitive vineyards, helping young farmers on their endeavors, phasing out distillation schemes, and better labeling rules will all be influencing French wine.
What are some negatives of the reform? France's Languedoc-Roussillon wine region will be the worst hit with significant declines in income by the reform's destruction of vineyards. There is also concern over the altering of the scenic French countryside. Lastly, uncompetitive producers are actually being paid to decrease their number of vines so the industry can be more focused on competitive wineries.
These changes to France's wine industry will mark quite a drastic change in this rich and relatively stable history. Tonight we have a special guest, local professor of history and part-time wine connoisseur, Samantha Rousseau, to discuss a variety of topics on France's rich wine history. Professor?
Thank you, Juliette, for having me on your broadcast this evening. I'm honored to be here. In order to appreciate current events involving wine, I'd like to let you know a little about its fascinating history. Wine is probably one of the symbols most commonly associated with France today, and for good reason. Nowadays, France has around 150,000 grape growers, producing about 1.5 billion gallons of wine per year. Greeks and Romans were the first people to plant our vineyards. Medieval times in France perpetuated the steadfast quality of wine in the French culture. It was the common drink of all social classes in the South, drunk as though it were water, with every meal and on every occasion. The Middle Ages were a tumultuous and war-filled time, but monasteries were the perfect place for vineyards because they had the resources, time, and safe location to maintain vineyards and wine production. Things haven't always been easy for the wine industry, though. Over the years, the French wine industry has been through some tough times. In the 1800s, many French vineyards fell victim to disease that crippled the dominating wine production. But good times or bad, this prominent symbol has often been the subject of newsworthy events in France, often due to the laws surrounding its production and distribution. In 1935, the Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée system was established to control wine quality. The European Union's wine reforms have been modeled after these French laws, which ties in nicely with what's going on with wine in today's news.
Thank you, Professor Rousseau, for sharing with us your knowledge of French wine. Now, we here at Wine and Dine à la France would like to use this time to our part to inject some life into the country's wavering wine industry by sharing with our viewers some of the top wine-related events and festivities all over the French countryside. Let's head over to our very own Monica Acton, who is experiencing some fabulous wine events that pertain to today's top story.
Bonjour, I am here in Béjou, France, for Les Serments de Béjou. It is turning into quite the party. Every year on the third Thursday of November, wine buffs from all over France flock here to get a taste of the new Béjouly wine. The economic hardships the winemakers have faced do not faze this party. The culture of wine still thrives. Béjouly holds the fame of this winemaking region. Tonight, as the scent of Sarment, or what we know as grapevine trimmings, fills the air, anticipation will hit the crowds. This ceremonial burning of Sarments is followed directly by the tapping of the cask and the unveiling of this new and coveted wine at midnight. The interesting thing about this wine is that it is best drunk when young. They don't have to dig into dusty wine cellars here. Thousands come directly at midnight to get the freshest and the first sip of this unusual wine before it is shipped all over the world. Set back in the mountains, this party has become extravagant with food and cultures of the little town of Béjou. There are dancers, shows, music, and fireworks as the night goes on and the wine is unveiled. This is definitely a place for all wine lovers to come and explore. In France, no matter what hardships this industry will face, where there is wine, there is a way. Back to you.
Thank you, Monica. It is very clear that wine is an important aspect of French culture. Although the reforms are overwhelming and sacrifices are being made, the industry will still benefit in many ways from the new regulations.
Also, everyone in France should be very grateful right now that we aren't in America's economic position. France is looking after its problems with much concern, and I'm sure that our fine country will stay afloat. That's all for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. See you all next week when we discuss France's latest food concern, rancid escargot in your local McDonald's.
Good night.